sip of my coffee. Okay. Okay, let's get going. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I do want to quickly remind you that if you have questions during the webinar, take your cursor, go towards the bottom of your Zoom screen, and there should be some options that pop up, which include a chat box and a Q&A, and you can key your questions in either of those two sections. We are excited to welcome some of our residents today, and before we get into that, I'm going to do kind of our standard protocol, which is a quick overview of Knollwood. We are a life plan community here in Northwest DC. We are a nonprofit, and it is a lovely setting that we're in. 16 acres here right across from Rock Creek Park, and it's very kind of luscious, and you feel like the park has continued on across the street. Okay, let's go ahead and meet these wonderful people sitting to my left and right. So I want to go ahead and introduce you to Nancy Axelrod, and then we have Les and Kathy McGeary. And why don't we start? I'm going to ask a broad question and then pass our little mic down. And again, to our viewers, if you cannot hear us, now is the time, please, so we can address it early on. But I'm gonna just ask you guys how long you've lived here at Knollwood, and we can start with Nancy and then pass the mic down, okay?
Okay.
Why don't you tell us your name? They know your name.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nancy Axelrod, and I've lived at Knollwood about 4 years.
Hi, I'm Les McGarry. I lived at Knollwood for about 1 year.
And I'm his wife, Kathy.
Yay, okay. So when we've done these in the past, we typically ask questions like, where did you come from, or how long you've been on the waiting list, what made you decide to choose Knollwood. And so let's start with maybe how long you were on the waiting list. Okay, we'll start with you guys this time. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Probably the longest waiting list in history. Les signed us up for Knollwood back in 1962 when he was the second lieutenant. And the reason for that is we have no family, and we kept coming to functions here, and we were so impressed, not only at the location, but at the people and the welcome we received. So we've been on this list a long time. And then Les decided he wanted a balcony unit. So 5 years ago, he said, please put us on the list for balcony unit. And exactly 1 year ago, this month, it became available. And lo and behold, we packed up and came right in.
It's such a great story because that's not common, but you guys waited for the perfect unit and it all worked out, which is so nice. And what about you, Nancy?
I was on the waiting list probably for about 6 months. There was a certain type of unit that I wanted that wasn't available, but they found a place for me to get on, as when I sold my condo, and I liked the unit so much I'm in, I stayed there. So it was a very smooth transition for me.
Excellent. Thank you. I am so sorry to our audience. I forgot to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know, I'm Helen Cahill. I'm a sales counselor here at Knollwood, and I've been working at Knollwood for about 7 years total, so it's been quite some time. Thank you all for those answers. They're great. So one of the things that I think is always good to talk about is what made you choose Knollwood, and what is one of your favorite things to do here? So why don't we start and keep going back and forth? Nancy, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Okay. About 6, 7 years ago, I started looking at retirement communities because the mantra, as Kathy and Les and Helen and Elise know, is you need to move to a place of your choice before you have to. And so I had a couple of friends here who gave me the lay of the land and I was able to come visit them. And um, I liked the size of Knollwood. Um, I wanted to stay in DC, and this is the most gorgeous setting that you can imagine with, Rock Creek Park surrounding us. I mean, that property is embedded practically in the park. And so it was a good move for me. And I'll let Les and Kathy talk about other things before I tell you my favorite things to do here.
Okay, great.
What?
Well, I wrote an article. If any of you are interested, I'll be happy to send it to you on good advice for seniors to choose a resident. This was published in numerous publications because it's an important decision. And I preach the gospel of the minute you're 80, you better get on a list. So many of our friends said, well, we're going to wait, or we'll move in with the kids, or we'll decide later. But I think you have to be realistic and realize that, number one, good places take time to get into, and number two, it's a life affirming decision. I mean, this is probably the last most important decision of where to live in your whole life. And fortunately, we went by the guidelines. We considered cost, location, activities, but really most importantly is the culture of the place. You have to decide if you fit in, and every place is very different. So I always tell people to go sit down with the resident one-on-one, away from management, and say to them, are you happy here? What do you like best? What do you not like? What was the hardest thing of moving in here? And since we've been here, I wrote another article called Adjusting to Life at the Old Folks Home. And it's a litany of everything Les and I went through to get adjusted. And fortunately, I think it made it very easy for us. But I'll let Amanda.
I decided to come here. I'm on the ski patrol at Ski Liberty for over 40 years. And I took a big fall, and I'm 83 years old. I realized this is it. I got to find a place where they can take care of me. And fortunately, I was able to ski down, ended up in the hospital, but I'm okay now. But I think I love it over here, and I made the right decision.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I think Les makes a really good point. For them, they had already been thoughtful, done research, figured out where they wanted to go, and got on a waiting list. And then you have this kind of life, but this situation that happens, and it's triggering. It's like, hey, Les is still okay and in good shape, but you know what? This is our signal that we need to make this adjustment. And it worked out where they had everything lined up, and also the timing with the apartment. Things just came together really nicely. And sometimes it works out like that. I mean, Nancy wasn't planning on staying in her apartment
Yeah.
that she's in, but it worked out that it's a beautiful place and she loves it. And so often when I'm working with customers, you find these situations, there's going to be stress. There's always stress when moving in. But you find these situations where things are starting to really come together, and it feels like the universe is saying, this is it, lean in, take that step, take that leap. And there is a lot of thought that goes into it, like the culture. Is this the culture that I want to be a part of? And we do say to people, after the first, maybe second appointment with myself, come in, have a lunch. I won't be there. I'm not going to be doing my sales part. Talk to the residents, pick their brains, get their sound advice on, or what they think about this type of community, because they live here. I work here, but I think it's so crucial. I usually tell people that's like our third date. You come back to Knollwood, and then you're going to meet with the residents, and hopefully by that time, at least if you want to join the waiting list or not. I think it really does make a difference. And then once you're on the waiting list, you can engage with other waitlisters, but residents at our events and get to know them more. Ooh, these are great questions. What are your backgrounds and how do you feel about the culture and how well do you fit? Um, so we'll come back to what you guys like best about to do here at Knollwood, and we'll start here. Nancy, I'll let you go ahead with your background.
You know, I have over 40 years basically designing and conducting educational programs for boards of directors of large nonprofits, colleges and universities, museums, cultural institutions. And I did a lot of travel, and I started an organization now known as Board Source. And I had my own consulting practice. And I actually retired a couple of years before I moved to Knollwood. I don't like the term retire. I like the term rewire, because you end up, you know, if you're smart, doing other things that you find meaningful. And I think that one of the things that I love so much about Knollwood, and it's triggered by your question, Helena, my background is people here are very interesting. I mean, you might say after a certain age, is everybody's interesting. I'm not sure about that. But there's so many people here who've had very interesting jobs and worked in different parts of the country and the world. And it's a wonderful community of, you know, intellectually, socially, and emotionally. And you use the term culture, Kathy, which is this elusive thing, but you kind of feel it when you come here a couple of times and you talk to people.
I think that's so true. And one of the things, unfortunately, with our last Residence Live webinar where we didn't have good sound, that was a theme that was kept coming up, is the culture and how welcoming the community is, but how rich the culture is because of these interesting residents with this variety of background experience. But we'll go ahead and let Kathy, since Les talked a little bit about his time at Ski Liberty, we'll let you talk a little bit more about your background, and if Les wants to say more, he can too.
Well, I met Les back in in this early 60s, and we met at GW. And I have to tell you, our first date was down to the memorial, and we heard Martin Luther King give his "I Have a Dream" speech. So that has just defined our life in Washington. In fact, Les said, "We're never leaving. This is the center of the universe." And so we've been married 53 years, and we'll never leave Washington. We love it. Now, as far as what was you were asking me about what we did? Oh, our background. Well, I put Les through 5 degrees in Washington, D.C., so he better never, ever leave me. He got his BA, his CPA, his MBA, his law degree, and then he practiced in Capitol Hill for his entire career. He was in the House Judiciary Committee as a staffer. And I am just amazed at the caliber of people here. When we sit down at dinner with these people, I'm talking with the Undersecretary of State over here. I'm talking about the Assistant Director of the Department of Education over here, the CIA person over here, the FBI here. And I am just a lowly high school teacher. So I'm rather intimidated, but I learned from them, number one, and I stand in awe of the careers they've had.
Well, my background really started in Hungary. As you can tell, I speak funny. I was in the 1956 Hungarian Revolution, so I had to leave. I ended up in Ireland, and somebody decided I should learn English. So I ended up in the Irish Army, which was a wonderful drinking club you can ever imagine. Then I came to America in 1959, and I joined the National Guard, DC National Guard. And that was somewhat exciting because we were called up for active duty about 21 times.
That's incredible. That is so much. And you think about all of just everything that this guy right here has done. It's just crazy. And you have all kinds of people like this who have just, I mean, as Kathy said, you're sitting at a meal, you're chatting with your neighbors, and you're like, oh my gosh, these people have had wild and crazy lives, and there's just so much to talk about. And it really just adds to what's going on here, truly. So we had some more questions that came in. To what extent does the military impact on the culture here at Knollwood? And I will touch a little bit and then I'll let you guys talk to that as well. So in 2018, Knollwood really expanded our eligibility criteria. So it went beyond people who had a relation to a military officer. And you still find that a lot of the people who live here have some connection to the military. And we still honor our military history. We still celebrate the birthdays. When you walk down the main concourse, you see all the flags. But I do think it's a nice honor to our past without being too much in your face, if that makes sense. And so people don't feel alienated if they don't have that connection. But I'll let you want to go ahead and talk, Nancy?
Sure. Yeah, because as Kellen said, no one changed its policy of not limiting new residents to some military background. There's less of a military presence, but my father served just for a brief time in the military and then had a career as a career diplomat, much to my good fortune and my sister and brothers. But it's very nice. The military presence is different military forces are honored on their birthdays, and sometimes they're interesting lectures, but I don't find it overwhelming or restrictive or, even that influential. We have a really wonderful new CEO who's the first non-general to get the position. And so I think that it is actually lovely to have the military background, but I don't find it overwhelming in any sense of the word.
This is a extremely welcoming place. People are very friendly. My favorite time to come here is to go breakfast, and there's a friendship table there, and you get to talk to people, and it's really a wonderful environment to relate to different people and telling them what you do, and they tell you what they do.
And I think for many of them, it's a true bonding experience. I notice when Les is at the friendship table for breakfast every morning, they immediately start remembering their military service. And right there's a connection. But the rest of us never feel excluded because, as one man said, the hardest job in the military is being a spouse of a military man. So the women bond, but we have that commonality in our past, and it's truly it brings us closer, I think, as a community.
Thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned the friendship table because that was something that came up during one of our last webinars. We had two residents here and they brought up how when they were initially told about the friendship table, they thought it was kind of cheesy. We're like, what? But then they actually when they moved in, they went to the friendship table. They made friends. They sat with people and chatted. And it's so true. Knollwood is so welcoming. We do our part here in the sales, marketing, and admissions office to let the neighbors know, hey, you have someone moving in on your floor, to send out a picture and a bio, because we want Knollwood to welcome you with open arms. It is a big and stressful move. There are so many moving parts. It takes an emotional toll on you. And so, coming into a new place, we want it to be as feel good as possible. We want the apartment to look beautiful. We want your movers to handle your things carefully. And we want the other people in the community to welcome you with open arms and invite you. And so I'm glad that you're mentioning the friendship table because it is such a special thing here. Please.
Our third day here, there was a fire drill at 6 o'clock in the morning. And in our pajamas, we all congregated in the lobby. And lo and behold, the designated resident came out with a clipboard, took attendance to make sure we were all there, gave us an update on the false alarm. And I was so impressed that we were cared for and led through the fire drill procedure, and we could go back to our rooms so happy.
You know, Kathy's comment about being cared for, I mean, this is independent living, but one of the most impressive things I witnessed at Knollwood, I moved in during COVID, during the height of COVID, and everybody was quarantined at that time, and meals were being delivered, no charge, because they didn't want residents interacting with each other and possibly spreading COVID cases. And so after that period of quarantine, when people could go out and do things with masks at the time, and somebody said, "Oh, that's terrible. You moved in during COVID." And I said, you know, I can't think of a better place to be than the height of this pandemic, because they took, it wasn't just advising us to quarantine, but management got all kinds of supplies for us. And, you know, we were updated constantly. And they even administered the vaccines here because they didn't want people to go off campus. And so it was just very impressive display of how management can take care of a community during times of crisis.
Thank you so much. It's true, and you're right. In independent living, you're not thinking of being cared for, but there are these times and circumstances where, like COVID or being new and during a fire drill, whatever it may be, where you just feel like, oh, there's people who are looking out for me, and whether it's management or your neighbors. And that's really part of the community here. We did have a question about how many people here live at Knollwood. And so we usually say around 300. Most of the people who live here live in independent living. It's just under 70% of our population. We have 160 independent living apartment homes. Okay, more questions coming in. What advice would you give someone who is starting to research retirement communities? Well, I would say get Kathy's article. Hello, she just told you, which she's happy to send to you. So if you key in your email address, we'll pass that along. But I will let these guys talk about their advice, even though we did sort of touch on it earlier. And the other part of this question is anything we should do or pitfalls to avoid. So I'll let you guys start. Advice when researching and anything they should do or pitfalls. I don't know, Kathy, if you want to start, Les, if you want to start.
Go ahead. The first thing you have to figure out is the finances, because you have to pay a monthly fee, and you got to have some resources to be able to do that. Now, this place has a policy that if somebody does not pay the monthly fee, that will be helped by us. We all contribute to a fund, which is wonderful. So, but you have to worry about your finances, because that is an important aspect of retiring.
And I can't tell you how important it is to do in-person visitations. because you need a sense of the people, and I keep saying the culture, but the kinds of people that you'll be dealing with on a daily basis. And it's very different. Also, the location of the place. This is, even though the inner city, I look out on Rock Creek Park and I could be out in the country. So it's amazing. Also, it's very important for some people to be near family. That's a consideration. And it wasn't for us because we have no family left. But for some, that's very important. Also, the ability to come and go. Transportation. Will I be taken to appointments if I can't drive? If I have a car, where will it be? If I have a pet, can I bring that pet? So there are so many aspects of it. So please do your homework, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, thank you. That was great. We got a question. We hear rumors that the food at Knollwood isn't very good. Comment. So I will speak for myself because I do eat here pretty regularly, and then I'll let these guys talk as well. I will say that there are certain things that I know are good on the menu. The soup's almost always good. I love a lot of the sandwich specials. There are certain standard items. We do have a new chef who has just started, and our sales, marketing, and admissions team, we just spoke about doing some events where we would feature him. So as potential waitlisters and potential new residents, we would encourage you to reach out to us so you can get on the list and find out for yourself. You can come in and taste his food, but I will let these guys speak to it. I know you all eat down there, so you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I've visited friends at all kinds of retirement communities, and usually the food is often a target of criticism. So you have to expect that. And, I think the food, it's not gourmet fare. But what I love about the food, two things. First of all, unlike other retirement communities, you don't have to pay. It's not mandatory to pay a certain amount for food. You just pay for what you go down and get at the bistro. And it's how the soups and the salad bar are wonderful. And what I especially appreciate is the diversity and the options, because they have a so-called standard for lunch and dinner and every night. Sometimes it's more than one choice. And if you don't like either one, you can go off the menu and order a sandwich that you can build yourself. You can order, grilled salmon, which is excellent here. They have a fish of the week. They have a chef special. So I really love the options. And there are people who still cook in their apartments. The kitchens are they're good supplies of the kitchen, supplies meaning the equipment. But frankly, I love not having to cook at all because because I traveled so much with my job, I just didn't cook that much. And so I think the food is fine.
I think that's fair.
I think the food is pretty good. Now, I come from Hungary, and there was starvation during World War II. So I have a different reference point about the food. So as long as there's something to eat, I'm happy.
And he won't miss a breakfast. He loves a complete breakfast. And the fact that you put in your order and they bring it to you. As Nancy said, when I talk to women here, they say the number one reason they're here is they never have to cook another meal. But I loved what you said about ordering off menu.
Yeah.
And also what I love is when you get dinner, you get dinner. I mean, included in that dinner is a salad. Then you get your meal with 2 sides, and then you get a dessert, and then you get a drink, and there's optional ice cream every day. So for me, this is heaven.
Yeah, I think what's so nice, as you mentioned, Nancy, is there is so much variety. You do have the standard for your lunch and dinner, and those change between lunch and dinner and change every day. And that's the best bang for your buck. As Kathy said, you get all these extras with the main option. But there's also things that are always available, like the grilled salmon, grilled chicken, 3 egg omelets. So there's a lot to choose from. And it is nice that we don't have a meal plan. You don't feel like you have to eat food or your money will go to waste or that kind of thing. Okay, next question. What kind and level of long-term care insurance will we need? Well, we have people who live here who don't have it, so you don't need it. If you have it, that's fantastic. But we have a lot of people who live here at Knollwood who don't have long-term care insurance policies. Um, if you have one and you have questions on it and how it would come into play here at Knollwood, please reach out to us. You can put in your email address in the chat box and say, I want to talk about my long term care insurance policy, and we can schedule an appointment to get into that. Let's see if there were any other questions that we missed out. Just talked about that. Okay, so we've got another one coming in. Do any of you use the fitness facilities, especially the pool? Well, before we talk about the pool, we were just talking before we went live about the fitness facilities. So I'll let Kathy start and then Nancy can pick up as well, unless you too.
We love the fitness facility. In fact, yesterday Nancy and I were in there together, and there was another lady, and she was doing high kicks on the bar that we could not. It's amazing. Now, Les and I go down at night before we go to bed because number one, it's very quiet, and we can use all the machines, and there, you can even watch television while you exercise. Now, the pool, I'm a lap swimmer, and we kept our membership at the Y because number one, we love the length of the pool, and this tends to be shorter and a little warmer than we like. But I'll let Nancy talk about the pool. She knows more.
No, I don't actually. I mean, I don't use the pool. I use the fitness center regularly. The fitness center is quite modest. It's small. And for a long time, I know marketing has probably, I don't know if you and Elise do this, Helen, but if say, oh, we're going to expand the fitness center, and I don't know if that's going to happen in our lifetimes. I mean, I would really like it. And a lot of people like Helen and Les go off campus. They belong to gyms. A lot of people walk regularly, either in the park, on the trails, or around the neighborhood, which is lovely. And so, and I used to be a swimmer, but I haven't used the pool here, but I've heard good things about it. The people there's a regular aquatics class during the week, and people are quite
They love it.
committed. They
Yeah.
really love it. Yeah. And then there are other people who swim laps. If you're used to swimming laps like Kathy and Les and I am, you can swim a lot more laps in this pool downstairs because it's not
Yeah.
it's not Olympic size, but
No.
it's enough for a few strokes, and certainly a good what do they call the aquatics class when I say that when I
Water aerobics.
water aerobics? Yeah, people really love that.
And you're right. It is a short pool. We do have some people here who do swim laps. They make it work, but there are other people like yourselves who keep their other, membership because they want to go a little bit farther, and that's okay. The pool is quite warm as well. But we do have a group that is dedicated. They love the pool. They go every day. There are people who always go to the water aerobics classes. It's very popular. So it's here if you want it, which is nice. Yes, we've been hearing from Maya that we're getting that new fitness studio, and I swear we better be getting it soon.
Something else, yeah.
Yeah.
There are also regular exercise classes
Yes,
offered to
thank
the
you.
residents a few times a week. There's a sit and fit class where you could either stand or sit in a chair. There's a wonderful instructor There's a Zumba class. There's a very athletic class on Friday mornings for people who can handle it. What other kind of in-house fitness?
Oh yeah, there's ballroom dancing.
Oh, yeah, I've been to that. There's actually an instructor who comes once a month, and you can dance with him, which is really nice. And also they have
There's yoga.
there's yoga. What else? What am I missing? Yeah. And there are lots of parties here. And
That's
often there's a live band and
Oh,
people get up
yes.
and dance spontaneously.
Mhm.
You know, everything is an occasion for a wonderful party, whether it's Halloween or July 4th picnic. And they've brought in some really wonderful groups, cultural groups, bands. We have a resident here who is a professional cellist, and she actually teaches and performs regularly in an orchestra, and she gives concerts every 6 weeks or so. And, you know, management works very hard to provide interesting intellectual and cultural activities, whether it's somebody coming to talk about something that's happening politically. You have to be careful here because the good thing is there's a diversity of political views, and you kind of learn who you can talk to about during this polarized time. Not that you can't talk to everybody, um, but I'm very grateful for the different activities and what is provided to the residents. And of course, a lot of people go to the theater in Washington and other events.
Would you all like to talk about any of the things that you particularly enjoy here? I mean, I know we did, but if there's a certain activity or something that we've done that you've really, really
I'm amazed at the variety of outside speakers who come here on such a variety of topics. Every day they post the activities calendar on the wall, and you could go to something practically every hour. But I'm also struck by the wonderful chapel services they have on Sunday. Les and I have gone to a couple, and they're very, very moving. There's in fact, one of the best attended classes here is on Bible study. I'm just amazed at the interest and the guest lectures they bring in. And Les, you better talk about your men's club. One gentleman said he moved in here only for the men's club.
Every week there is a men's club meeting, and you can talk about any topic you wish. And it's very interesting, the people, the diversity of views on different items. I like to listen to them because I have strong opinions and I don't like to impose it on people.
Thank you for sharing. So we got another question. What are your arrangements for assisted living? And also, can you live in independent living and get additional help? And so I can speak to those. We have 43 assisted living apartments. Majority of them are our standard 410 square foot, 1 bedroom option. And we have people who move directly into assisted living from the outside, or we have people who transition through the levels of care. Now, you can live in independent living and get some additional help, but you can't move into independent living needing additional help. So let's say Nancy in 5 years is maybe getting a little foggy and she just needs someone to put her pills in a pill box and give that to her once a week. Medication management, it's an extra fee, it's no big deal. Nancy's still in her beautiful independent living apartment. Great. But if Nancy needs help with getting dressed and brushing her hair and her teeth and the medication reminder, and she needs a reminder to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, then that's not independent living. So there's kind of a fine balance, and that's something that we can talk more about in an appointment. People always want to ask, how does transitioning from one level of care to another work? what's that process? And I will say it is a long process. It is a very involved process where we talk to you and your family, and there's, it's a lot of moving parts, but we do our best to work across departments and make it a smooth transition if and when the time comes.
Yeah, I think the goal here is when people move into independent living, the goal is to have people age in place while it's safe for them to do so, and they don't endanger their fellow residents,
Our neighbors.
the neighbors. So that's the assumption here. But one of the nice things about being in a continuing care retirement community is you do have options of moving to different levels of care as needed. And I should say too that one of the things we haven't talked about is there are people here who are hospitalized for some kind of um, problem. Maybe they fall, but they don't need to go into assisted living, but they do need to go into rehab. And we have a really very good rehab department downstairs. I was hospitalized for a short time after a fall, and I was able, fortunately, to move back into my apartment. But I got an order from my doctor to do basic rehab downstairs, and there's just a really wonderful rehabilitation staff. I don't know if you two have experienced it, but it's quite good.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you talking about that because not only do we have the inpatient, short term, subacute rehab stays, but you can do outpatient rehab, like Nancy's talking about, where you're in your independent living apartment, but maybe you just want to work on strength building and your
Yeah.
doctor can order physical therapy and you can go right here. Over to the rehab department and get it. We have physical, occupational, and speech, and it's nice to have that on site. And here we go, our last question, guys. What happens if one couple comes to need assisted living, but the other is still suited for independent living? This is too much to go into on a webinar. Put in your phone number and I can give you a call and we can talk through it because it's kind of we can run through different hypotheticals and scenarios. Yeah.
You know, Helen, you asked about pitfalls
Yeah.
and things to consider. Kathy's article is wonderful on, and I recommend it to all of you on what you should think about. But as somebody who's spent almost 50 years on governance issues, I think it's important for you to understand that governance at a continuing care retirement community is quite different than it is owning your own home or even a condo or a co-op, because we don't own our units. And this facility is governed by a governing board for the ADF, that is the governance structure. But we also have an extremely active residents board, and it's called the Knollwood Residents Association Board. They do not have governing authority the way the ADF board has, but they have extremely active committees, one of which I serve on, and we present our recommendations to management, and they in turn present recommendations or concerns to the ADF board. And so, again, you need to realize that you have limited authority, but certainly there are avenues like the Knollwood Residents Association. And of course, if you live in independent living, you have the great option of going down and interacting with people or not. There are times when I go down and pick up something at the bistro because I wanted to watch some kind of program. But I like that there's always a choice to interact, whether it's meals or special events or parties they have. And it's really worth getting to know the residents here.
Thank you so much. Are there any I think Nancy just kind of said her last piece, maybe.
Yeah.
Did you all want to say one more thing before we go?
you better introduce Miss Knoll.
Thank you, Les. Thank you.
This is
Yes.
my mascot. This is called Miss Knollwood, and she'll be glad to greet you. Please come and see our unit and meet Miss Knollwood.
Great. Thank you so much. And we wanted to thank you all who joined us today. Thank you all for being here and taking the time this morning. We really do appreciate it. Seriously, please give us your email address, viewers, so we can send you Kathy's articles because they're very good. And if you want to schedule a tour, you can. Here's Les. Oh, yes, we have some pictures. So let's scroll through these pictures real quick before we sign off. Here's Les on his beautiful patio. He's looking out at the gorgeous scenery and enjoying his
Probably
coffee.
listening to the birds. You can always hear the birds
And
here.
he's watching a deer.
Oh, yes. Yes, it's nice. There's a lot of wildlife here on the property. And actually, Lacey and I the other day were talking about, we were sitting here planning something and the bird was just outside. The bird, hey bird. Yes, you hear.
Making a lot of noise.
Yes.
Competing.
Yes, there's a lot of nature to enjoy. Yeah, it's a beautiful view from their apartment. We've got our next webinar coming up in July, and we encourage you to go on our website, reach out to us, come in for a tour. We can answer any questions you have, get you marketing materials. I'm happy to run through 1,000,001 hypotheticals. But yeah, come in and see it for yourself. And thank you again for joining us today. You can visit our website, knollwoodcommunity.org, or call our marketing line at 202-541-0149. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.